Number 17, Wilderness Run. I don't really have that much to say about this ride because it's the smallest coaster in the park. Also, I'm too tall to ride it, so I can't really give an opinion on it. It deserves to be at the bottom of this list. Number 16, Woodstock Express. As much as I like this ride because it was my first ever coaster, I still have to place it at the second to last spot because it is a kiddie coaster and it doesn't have great elements, it's kind of slow, and it's not very intense. At the number 15 spot, I have Corkscrew. To be honest, in my opinion, I think this ride is bad. I'm not a big fan of aero loopers, and this is not one of the better ones. This will destroy your head, and it really hurts throughout the entire ride. At the number 14 spot, I have Cedar Creek Mine Ride. Like Corkscrew, this ride kind of hurts and is in general kind of bad. It's also really boring and slow and just not an enjoyable experience at all. Iron Dragon takes the number 13 spot. When I went to Cedar Point for the first time, I was around 8 years old. I loved this coaster when I went there. However, now it's kind of boring, slow, and I'm not the biggest fan of suspended coasters in general. So this is why Iron Dragon will not be ranking very high. Blue Streak ranks at the number 12 spot for me. This was my first ever wooden coaster, and I found it to be a very fun experience. You get some nice airtime. It's a little bit rough, but it doesn't take away from the overall experience of the ride. The airtime isn't the strongest, but it's still fun. For its size, Blue Streak is a very fun and enjoyable ride. Coming in at the number 11 spot is Gemini. This coaster is kind of weird. I can't tell if I like it or not. I only rode it once, and that was the first time I ever went to Cedar Point, but I wasn't really sure if I enjoyed it or not. I didn't want to ride it again, but I kind of liked it. The airtime is okay. It's not great, but I don't really remember it that much. I just remember it wasn't a very enjoyable experience. And that's why this coaster is only coming in at number 11. Now we are getting into the good rides. Coming in at number 10 is Wicked Twister. Unfortunately, the last time I went to Cedar Point, I did not get the opportunity to ride this coaster, but I've heard it's a very fun ride. Unfortunately, I've also heard that this coaster has a rattle. I've heard the rattle takes away from the experience a little bit, which is why this coaster is only coming in at number 10. Rougarou is taking the number 9 spot. This B&M floorless coaster is a lot of fun to ride, but I do have one major problem with it that makes it not be placed as high on the list as if it didn't have this problem. And that problem is the head banging. This coaster can be fun if you keep your head forward, but the problem is it's very difficult to keep your head forward while going through all these inversions and intense transitions. I struggled the entire time to keep my head forward, and the second I relaxed my head, it immediately got banged around, and it hurt. At the number 8 spot is Magnum XL 200. Many people are very big fans of this coaster, however, I am not. I find this coaster to be very painful. It is manufactured by Aero, and as you probably know, a lot of Aero's rides are very painful, and this is not an exception. Normally, I would love to experience airtime. However, on this coaster, I hate airtime. Every single time an airtime hill comes, I'm bracing myself for pain. These airtime hills are shaped in a way where they are insanely painful. Coming in at number 7 is Valravn. This ride is fun, but that's about it. It's nothing too special, it's not that memorable, and the restraints, although it's very big, make it so that you don't really feel much force. It is a pretty tall dive coaster, and it's really cool to hang over the drop. However, that's really all it has. It's overall just a very kind of forceless and boring ride in general. However, it's better than a lot of the other rides at Cedar Point because it is so big. Gatekeeper is taking the number 6 spot. Many people think that this ride is forceless. However, when I rode it in the back a few months ago, I found it to be incredibly forceful. All of the inversions were insanely forceful, and I was very surprised. Although the back can be a little rattly, especially on the wing seat, it's overall a very enjoyable ride, and the keyhole elements are very cool. Raptor is taking the number 5 spot. Although this ride can bang your head around a little bit, it is this high on the list because of its intensity. This ride is insanely intense, especially the last helix. I like all of the inversions on this ride, except for the Cobra Roll. The Cobra Roll can be a little bit snappy. Overall, this B&M invert is an amazing ride, and that is why I place it at number 5 in the park. For me, Top Thrill Dragster ranks at number 4 in the park. The launch is insanely intense, and the whole ride is just a big adrenaline rush. Although it is very short, every single moment on this ride is memorable and extremely intense. This is why this ride comes in at number 4 in the park. The number 3 coaster in Cedar Point is Millennium Force. This was the first ever Giga coaster, and in the front row especially, it is insanely intense. This ride is very enjoyable, very smooth, although it does have a very slight rattle. It's barely noticeable though. I love the Intamin T-bar restraints, and overall, the ride is just very enjoyable. The second best coaster at Cedar Point is Maverick. This Intamin Blitz coaster is very unique. It features a beyond vertical drop, 2 launches, 2 inversions, and some very intense turns, and some great airtime. This ride is very intense throughout the whole ride. The second half is better than the first half, but the first half is still pretty good. The launch surprised me when I went a few months ago. I wasn't expecting it to be one of the highlights of the ride, and it was. There is even a water effect as you go out over the lake. Finally, coming in at the number 1 spot at Cedar Point and the number 1 coaster in the world is Steel Vengeance. This ride features an unbelievable amount of airtime. All 4 inversions are great as well. This coaster is absolutely crazy and it never lets up throughout the entire ride. The mid-course brake run barely slows you down at all.